CTA, Community Technical Assistance, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we've been around since 2002, and we work with youth throughout to access or help them academically, as well as work with communities to deal with, in historically marginalized communities, to deal with disasters. And so I've been doing this now in North Carolina. We work with over 1,000 youth over the last, since 2020. So doing remote learning is when we really got started in North Carolina. And we work with over 5 counties in the state of North Carolina. We're probably at, since 2020, we've probably been awarded about $1.5 million in restricted and unrestricted funds. That means it's about 55% of our income is with restricted, and 45% is around unrestricted. We really don't like that number. We're working really hard to kind of change it, and we'll talk about why that's important at a later time. So just from a hands, if how many of you here in your churches or where you are at least write either none or never write any grants for your organization this year? If you've never written any grants, just raise your hand. Okay, all right, that's fine. How many 1 to 3 have you written 1 to 3 grants this year? Okay, good. Anyone 4 to 7? Okay, maybe more, 8 to 12, 13 to 20, 20 plus. Okay, it's fine. Wherever you are, it's fine. I'm probably at the 20 plus range, so it's fine, but it's all right. It's just, you got to start somewhere, amen? Okay. So again, it's all about building a powerful grants portfolio for this calendar year, which is in the 4th quarter, and going into the next calendar year, which is 2023. Again, what grant works for you? So we like to look at, when I begin to make grant decisions in my portfolio, I start thinking about a couple things. The criteria, I honestly know what it is. I'm trying to look, but I don't have my glasses, so I'm gonna have to turn around, so please excuse my back, okay? I can't see. I wrote it, but I can't see it. It's tough, right? Okay, so we have a criteria. So first we like to develop a set of decision criteria. That's the timing, the credibility of the grant, the relationships that we already have, and pre-proposal work that's required. Most grants or most proposals that you apply, there's a lot of work that you have to do prior to submitting, prior to even making the decision to submit. And then we wait. We do this weighting scale in our office where we like to assign a weight to each category. That's either negative, neutral, or positive, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then we give it a score. Yes, we rate a score on how well we think we could win this grant, this opportunity. And so I hope you can see that, but trust me, I have some handouts, so if we could maybe hand out some of the handouts, they may not be as big, but I do have some handouts. So what we try to do is that we do try to look at the grant, and we look at certain categories like, what is there a relationship we already have with the grant maker? So we do numbers. So numbers are like 0 is neutral, we don't have anything, 1 to 5 is positive, and the -1 to -5 is negative. And so in this particular example, we just looked at any relationship, any relationship we have, any compliments for the grant makers' goals, any compliments. So most grant makers will have their goals, and then you should have a goal that aligns with what their goal is, and so forth. Okay, I don't have as many. I only have 50. So if you want to share, if you can, but you can probably read. And so in the end, when we get down to the bottom, the objective part is very, very important. Do you meet the eligibility requirement to get this grant? Not that you want it, but are you eligible to receive it? And then next is, does it serve your community? Most grants are regionally defined. In other words, I'm in Charlotte in Mecklenburg County. I see a grant that's available in New Hanover County, in Wilmington. I want that grant. No, they only serve Wilmington, New Hanover County. They don't serve Mecklenburg County. So that won't work for you. And then there's a scoring system that I like to do. Sometimes it's difficult, but I like to take down and do this scoring system before I take on the initiative. And this one would say 49 is great. Yes, we can do this. And anything below that, it's like a 35, it's maybe a higher we can apply, but if it's 34, it's pretty much a no-go, okay? And so I always say, please don't take on more than you can eat. Everyone says, I want to do it all. No, it's not a good thing. Really, don't do it. And so what grant works for you will depend on your strategy. So you have to develop a strategy that works for you and how you make a decision. What works for us may not work for you, but I've been doing it a long time, and I'm letting you know every opportunity that you see, every solicitation that you look at is not for you. Try not to chase the money, okay? It's all right. You will get there eventually. So how do we identify some grant making, some type of a grant that would work or research? Now, one of the things I like to do is I like to look at it as walking up the steps, baby steps, right? How do you get there? And there's like 6 steps you can look at. Look for government and private sources, review background materials, determine questions, create a script, contact the funder, and build a strategy. All right, so I've received a lot of no's. I've submitted grants, and they all came back, says, we are excited that we got your application. Unfortunately, you didn't make it. And so what do you do when that happens? Someone said, try again, right? So what I've learned is that all information is good information, good or bad. And so what I've done is that I've called the grant maker and said, some will send you something back in writing and say, these are the things that, this is how well your application scored, and here's some feedback. Most federal grants will do that, but the local private grants or state grants, they just don't have the person to do it. Typically, it's one person doing it, and they don't have enough folk to give you back, but they'll take your call. So I've called, and back in 2019, I was wondering why couldn't we win in North Carolina? We was primarily New Jersey. We used to win a ton of these opportunities, and I couldn't understand it, why everyone kept saying no. And so we applied to one. I knew we were going to get it. We didn't get it, and I called. I said, hey, how are you today? She said, I'm great. I'm Reverend Whitley. I'm with Community Technical Assistance. And I was wondering, I noticed that we didn't get it, and we're glad, we just want to establish a relationship with you. Is there something you could, is there something about an application that you felt that we could improve on for the next time? And she was like, well, we really liked your application, but we went to your website. They said, yeah, you went to your website, and when we saw your website, we couldn't tell whether or not you were going to do the work in North Carolina or you were going to do it in New Jersey. And I was like, yeah, but my website was just showing our experience. She said, yeah, but we just weren't sure. And I told everybody, call us, take it down right now. And we redid it totally. So that feedback was probably the thing that kept people from giving us money. Because you may have a well-written application, but how you present yourself on your website, and people do look at your websites, they really do, they really read that. That prevented us from actually getting that award. But after we did that, it seemed like the doors just opened, because everything that we were writing about, what they saw about us, was in alignment. Does that make sense? Okay. So I can talk about that, I'm giving you an overview right now. I had 40 slides that I wanted to do, but I was told I had 30 minutes. And then gauging by everyone, I have what we call newbies, right? So if you don't write more than 5 applications a year, you're a newbie. If you've never written one, you're a newbie, okay? If you've written 20 or more, you're still a newbie, but kind of an old head a little bit is what we like to say, okay? So please, there's no right or wrong way to write, but I do like to talk to you about how we've been very successful. So we do research. So your grant portfolio is much like research. If you're a pastor, if you're like myself, you're constantly researching things. I suggest when you research for your, especially contextual knowledge that you're trying to maybe tie to what's going on today, you create a folder and you put that information in there, because it can become research that you have to write about your needs. One of the things that's very important is that you need to distinguish between where you are located and the impact of your services. Where you're located and the impact of your services. Your church can be here in Charlotte, but your impact of your services may be in Concord. It's okay. You just need to be clear about that. And when you write, you need to be clear about that. If your church is, let's say, Sanford, then your impact, if we're writing about Sanford, then we should be talking about Sanford. Yes? So always be clear of where your impact is, where you're located, and where your impact is, okay? That's very, very important. Do your services impact areas outside the county? If so, how? All right, I'll give you this. I recently wrote an application. We won. It's very good. It's very excited. But when we get, just understand, when you write most applications, the funder will approve it, but then there's a review panel that you don't know that comes behind. Okay, and this is where most of the time you'll see an application that wins but never gets funded. And the reason why, especially at state government, what happens is that in county government, your county commissioners or your state commission will say, we love the idea, we're gonna pass it, we're gonna award it. You get this nice letter, and then you wonder, what is it, why is it taking so long to implement it? And it's because they have a review panel that goes back through your application, and they review every line and what you said in your application to make sure it's consistent, that that county will not get in trouble if they award you. Did I lose you? So we wrote for one county, but we wrote in the application that we were gonna need access to some land in another county. They approved it until we got to the back room. And they said, nope, we're not gonna do it. So what do you mean? Because where you're writing at, that last one, do your services impact areas outside the county? It did. Well, my thing was that, no, it doesn't, because we solely gonna use it for this county. They said, no deal. Right? Because counties don't like to step on other counties' toes, right? And they're not going to give the other county any type of credit for whatever you're going to do. They don't benefit from it because no one votes for them in that other county. Okay? So I'm just giving you a real life story. Is that all right? So we had to find something in this county, and eventually it took us about 4 months of just negotiating, but that was non-negotiable. Yes, 15 minutes, okay. All right, so there are different funders that you can go to. Everyone knows federal, state, and local. Y'all familiar with the federal, local, and state funders, right? Okay, all right. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one. So here's a tip. All right, so most people wanna know, where do you find grants? I know that was a question. You have grants.gov, look at that. That's your federal agency. You don't need to pay for that. That's free. You go to grants.gov. But understand, anytime you deal with a federal agency, you have to enter your information in, and you have to be clear about what you're looking for, because what will happen is that they will send you potential solicitations, okay? How many minutes I got? Oh, gosh. I'm rushing, someone's, okay. All right. The next is that you have what's called I want to give you this one about, you have your state and then your local. So your state, the one on the bottom, it's your it's the ips.state.northcarolina.us. All right, so I don't think, I used to pay for agencies that would give me access to their database to search for grants, right? And it could be useful. But what happened was, as soon as we started growing and get more active, those were not, they basically were going to the sites that I'm going to and grabbing it for me. And sometimes it's delayed response. And so I just go right to the grants.gov. If you can get a little confused, it's fine, but they will give you that information. The state website, once you go and you register, so you have to register, it's free, you register, and you give them all your information, and they will automatically send that information to your website, or to your email that you put. How many don't check your email most of the time? Do not give someone relationships that's gonna have contact if they don't check their email. You get solicitations every day. Every day. I got 2 this morning. And then the next one is the North Carolina Community Foundation organization. Take a look at that one, because that one will give you ones that the North Carolina Community Foundation is free, and all you need to do is just register, and it will take you through the counties that you're in. It will find you some locally, okay? I want to get through the presentation and have questions. That's not mine. Okay, so I talked about restricted and unrestricted funds. Okay, can someone give me an example of what's a restricted fund? Oh, yeah. Okay, what? Report. Okay. Okay, report specific criteria. Anyone else has another example? You have to pay it back. Okay, no, maybe not that. Yes, you can only use it for what you ask for. Okay, what's unrestricted? Black people, we use it for whatever we want. We different. Okay. Which is better? Restricted or unrestricted? Unrestricted. And why wouldn't restricted be good? Unless you really want to get everything done. Well, wait, everybody's telling me all at one time. What? Elder, why would you think so?
If it's specifically what you need it for, especially when it comes to education, for instance, then I would want a restricted one.
Okay, so when we started, I was in the same where you were. I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta get a grant. And you understand that grants are time sensitive, right? So you not only gotta apply for it at a certain time, but it only lasts for a certain period, right? And so that 1 year period, typically, or a 2 year period, at the end of that grant, it runs out, and it can be renewable, but it typically runs out, yes? And so you always find yourself what? Starting over, looking for another grant. One of the things in the grants they talk about is sustainability. If I give you my money, and at the end of the 2 years, how will your program continue to go? Yes? And most people can't answer that. They say, well, we're going to do X, Y. No. Okay? Then I learned and I grew, okay? And I realized that unrestricted funds was just as important. What's an unrestricted fund? What's an unrestricted? Give me an example. Okay, so. Right, gives you latitude. So an unrestricted fund is what I call a fee for service. This is where you should be. Unrestricted fund, a fee for service. This is where I think the church has to think a little bit more about what we do, right? In other words, there's something called request for proposals. Every county, this is not even a federal initiative that you have to go through. Every local and county just received a boatload of money from the American Rescue Plan Act, and it's called fee for service. In other words, if you provide a service You can apply for that proposal, and they will award you that to give that service. I talked about youth education, right? We do youth education. We're very good at it. We understand how to make it work. Now, school districts say, we need help with tutoring. We say, this is what we do. They say, great, write it down. We write that in. We give them a cost for the year. We serve them. They pay us. Then that money pays us back for what we did, but we also have, when it comes in, my only accountability to them was giving them an invoice for them to pay. How about that? How about that, right? But we did have grants that we do get that are restricted. Every category that I have to do, I have to account for it. I have to give my monthly reports. I have to count every dime that comes in. So if I said that I'm going to pay $100,000 in salaries, guess what? You're going to pay $100,000 in salaries. Okay? If you say that you're going to pay whatever that is, so they both can work. Yes, question. Well, is that for the grant or is that for a grant? Okay. Well, we had that happen before. We got close to $800,000 one year. That's what we got. Okay. We can only spend $300,000. I know everybody. So, what happens in those cases, you have to look at the grant too. It was a reimbursable grant. It was a challenge because a reimbursable grant, they says, you have to spend your money first, you have to give us receipts for what you've done, and we're going to reimburse you. Even though they awarded you $800,000, yes, we were excited, we were ready to go, everybody was fired up, we was jumping up and down, and then we was like, okay, well, when are you going to advance the money? They said, oh, no, no, no. It's a reimbursable grant. And so we were like, well, we had $800,000, we wouldn't need you. Right? But what happened was that we actually, there's nothing they would do. There was nothing they would do. And so we were fighting with the state, and we said to the state, they said, okay, the governor, you just did smoke and mirrors. You put out a press release and showed how much money you gave to the people, but the reality is that when you go back and look at how many vendors that got awarded, you look at how much money did it actually spend. Because what they did is they said it was reimbursable, and most companies that are like our size when we started out could not spend that money, did not have the money up front to spend, and then they were fighting you when you put that money in to give it back to you. So if I put out $100,000, how much do you think I want to get back? $100,000, right? So then why are you offering me $60,000? Okay, so that's one. But you had a good question. I want to make sure I answer her question. She said she got a grant. She realized that she couldn't spend all the money. What happens? They recapture that money. That is not good for you. The funder doesn't give you money to get the money back. So that's when I talked about earlier, biting off more than you can chew. Okay? So you try not to do that. You should always be in communication with your program manager or whoever you got awarded and explain to them what the problems are. You can reprogram grant money. You just can't do it on your own. You have to talk to them about why you need to do that and give them a justification, and most will consider it. We had it happen. I think we got a digital literacy grant. It was only $20,000 or whatever to buy equipment. Part of that grant was that we were trying to do educational awareness for people of how to do digital literacy, but folk didn't have access to the internet. It was a great grant, but we were giving them a $100 stipend. That's all they needed to do is watch the video, but they didn't have access to the internet. So that was like $10,000 that we needed to spend that we couldn't spend. So I called the lady and said, hey, look, we got a challenge. What's the challenge? Well, the people that we thought we were going to be able to do didn't have internet service, so we can't spend the $10,000. But I had a solution. I said, but we can buy more computer technology with it. She said, okay. And so we bought more technology instead of doing that. So you can go back. You really do not, you don't want to get on that list with a funder that says they gave you $30,000 and you only spent $5,000. You don't want to be on that list because they will not give you money the next time, because now they have to recapture that money, and when they recapture that money, they have to reappropriate it. That means somebody else has to do more work. I gave you kind of like an overview. I want to say the other thing you really need to look at is partnering. Partnering. So how many pastors we have here? If you can just raise your hand. So, okay, all right. How many people are in other organizations outside of the church? Fraternities, sororities, right? Okay. Your partners. When I go to write grants, especially the larger grants, you want to consider partners, right? Consider partners, because your partners help you to understand and increase the impact of what you're going to do. Yes? No? Yes? Give you an example. Okay, okay, so we wrote a grant for remote learning. When everything happened, when all the churches were closed in 2020, right? The kids were out of school, churches were closed. I realized that in order to receive the money or to get the money, I said, well, we're going to partner with churches. I asked pastors, will you be willing to open up your fellowship hall, all right, and allow us to come in? We basically rented their facility, so they earned income during that time. Would you allow us to open up your facility to allow us to come in to do kids, maybe your kids as well, any kids to come in? And would you allow us to hire some of your people in the church? Would you allow us to create jobs from your people in the church, right? And so we partner with folk. And that we served over 450 people who kids were out of school. They were full-time, and we gave them from 7 to 5. So they didn't have access to the internet, and most of the people there's no requirement that they have ever been to the church. And we got great letters back. This is the first place they felt safe to do their work, right? And some people said, at home, I'm constantly distracted, but here, I can focus. Here in the church, I could focus, right? And so there were many things that went on, and we were excited about it. That was a partnership. That was a real partnership where we looked at, they were able to offer a service, the facilities, and the people that we could hire and come in and work with them, okay? But there are all kinds of partnerships. Just make sure you don't do both the same thing. You can't do both the same thing. It's gonna be a conflict. You can't put a bear in a bee's nest and expect he's not gonna get the honey. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So everyone has to know their role and be willing to play their role in doing that. Any other questions? Good question. Everyone understands what a 501c3 means? What does it mean? Somebody? Okay. What government? Federal. Federal. It's a federal tax exempt status that you have, okay? You can lose, do you know you can get your 501c3 and then you can lose it? What's the easiest way to lose your 501c3? Not use it. I heard not use what? Not keep a record, not using it. How does the federal government would declare that you can lose your 501c3? Wait, what? Oh, okay, that's complicated. But what's the easy? What's their mechanism? It's automatic. Oh my gosh. Wait. What? Not paying taxes? Right, not renewing it, yes. Okay, all right, let me help you. No one reviews your application. When you put your 501c3 application, you have 3 years to report. Even if you earn less than $25,000, they give you a reporting system to submit a card in, okay? You can submit a card. You have to submit something into the federal government that says that you earn less than $25,000 and you're not doing it in 990s. If you don't report for 3 years, you're automatically revoked. It used to be that CPAs could file manually. They don't do it anymore. It's electronically. After COVID, everything went electronically. Well, we had our initial 501c3 for like 10 years. And we got hit with a situation, and our CPA said he filed it, and he didn't file it, and I got that call from a vendor that says, we can't fund you anymore because we don't see you on the federal tax exempt site. And we was like, what are you talking about? Now let me tell you, we didn't say, you know what? We don't need it. We just go as a nonprofit because you can be a nonprofit and not be a 501c3. You can. And do you know, you go to look at those opportunities and grants, how few they become? Very slim. And then you have to get what's called a physical sponsor. And the physical sponsor means what? What's a physical sponsor? Anybody know what a physical sponsor is? Right. So someone else has your 501c3, you don't have it, you still write, and they allow a physical sponsor. So when the money comes, guess where the money goes? To the physical sponsor. So I've heard terrible stories when the money goes to the physical sponsor, and then the physical sponsor says to you, well, I tell you, my people, we different. We're going to tell you what it is up front. Okay, they said, they don't, that's different. She said, give me my cut, is what you Okay, no. The physical sponsor then starts hitting you with record keeping and says, you need to submit to us how you plan to spend it. Because if you misappropriate this money, guess what? The physical sponsors, and then also the physical sponsor gets the money and decides not to give you the money. Oh, that can happen, and there's nothing, I got you, it's nothing that the funder can do. So, yes, question in the back.
Do you have a relationship with the FTC, Foundation for the Carolinas in Charlotte? Foundation for the Carolina. And the reason I'm asking is because here in Charlotte, maybe about 2 years ago, Mayor Valhouse declared $250 million is designated in a racial equity fund for racial inequalities in Charlotte. Even at this church, Bethel Church, was bulldozed down along with 10 or 11 other churches in Charlotte, and we had all kind of racial inequities and that sort of thing. So my question to you is that organizations like FFTC, and we meaning another organization I'm associated with, you get these they give you a funding cycle, and then they come up with these people who tell you how to spend the money and what you need it for. What's your best recommendation for dealing with people like Foundation for the Carolinas? They're housing $250 million that they've got to divvy out to people who lived in Brooklyn and Second Ward areas in Charlotte, North Carolina. They lost their communities, their schools, and all that. Even this church here was directly impacted. It's a part of our annual conference minutes.
Good question. So her question is very similar to everyone's, what you know that happened. Do you remember all of the marching that took place when we were dealing with Black Lives Matter? Do you remember the Me Too movement? Do you remember a lot of organizations that say, we're going to put money to that? Yes? There's a lot that said, we understand what you're dealing with. You ask a good question. It's a difficult question. It's loaded. It's a lot. Only thing I would say to you is not, you know, oftentimes we look and say, they got all this money, how do we get it? I said, you chasing the money. What do you do right now? Because whatever you do, whatever you want to do, you probably have you need the skill set to do it, or can you bring people in to do it? They're gonna have criteria. You know, you can walk up and say, give me the money, and they say no. They have a criteria. They're gonna give you a list and say, this is what we want. We're looking at the categories that you can do. They may even say, we don't take unsolicited proposals. There's an invitation. Blue Cross and Blue Shield, they do a ton of invitational only proposals, meaning you just can't write something to them and say what you want. You have to, they invite you in for a conversation to see if that's what's, that you actually align with what they're trying to do. Everything may not be for you. I'm not saying not to go. I'm not saying not to go for it. I'm saying that everything may not be for you, and they have eligibility requirements. That's a very specific one. I would probably have to look more into the solicitation to see what they're saying. I get it. Any other questions? Y'all are quiet, man. We talking about I just want you to know, whether or not you haven't written any grants before, you haven't written any RFP. Black folk have been doing the services that you're asking for money to do for years, right? For years. What I think we have to do is to think about how that service, we hear things about folks saying how we impact it. We have folk that could write. It doesn't have to be the best proposal. You just got to answer the question. If they ask you for red, don't talk about blue. Right? The worst thing a reviewer can do on your application is have to guess what you're asking for. You're asking for red, here's red, and this is why red is important to us. Answer the questions in the application. I mean, she didn't ask me to tell you how to write an app grant. She said to locate grants. So I just want to be clear. You can go to places like grantmaking.com, and you could spend the $99 or $200 a year, and it gives you access to their database. If you've never wrote a grant, I don't like to limit you in what you can do, right? Because if a federal grant works, I've seen the worst written grant for a federal, and they got awarded because the concept was clear, but it was poorly written. Right? But that doesn't mean you can't win. If you don't win, you always want to get feedback. Contact your funder that you wrote it to. They don't have to give you anything, but it's always good to contact them and ask them about what it is. Partnerships are great. You should look at partnerships, as many as you can. Just make sure everyone is doing something different. It really keeps everyone honest, and everyone's clear of what allocation, she said cut, the allocation that needs to come to you that you need to get. Any more questions? Boy. Okay, so I'm really excited about this. It seems to be something that everyone comes up and says, can you please tell us where to find grants and where to go, and I hope I helped you. Did I help you? Yes?
crime.
And we want to, first of all, thank our presiding elder for this opportunity to come before the district conference to, thank you. Got it. Oh, yeah, that button. A doctorate doesn't mean anything when you don't know what the buttons are. And so we want to, first of all, begin our particular piece, and in the interest of time, Elder, we only need about 10 minutes, just 10 minutes of your time. If we would cue the video, please.
Laney, thank you. Now, less than a month away from November 8th, the general election, our congressional midterm. 29 days from today, voters will head to the polls to cast their decisive ballots. We begin our Commitment 2022 coverage tonight with a preview of some of the races and a look at some of the big issues in this congressional midterm. Over the next month, you will hear directly from the candidates themselves, who sat down with WXII 12 News for extended interviews. Bill O'Neill joins us now with a look at what we can expect to see with this cycle's political coverage. Bill.
North Carolina voters have a U.S. Senate race, 2 state Supreme Court races, and here in the Piedmont Triad we have several congressional races as well as every seat in the legislature up for grabs. Voters will hear from North Carolina's Senate candidates Sherry Beasley and Ted Budd in a race that could well determine control of the U.S. Senate next year.
What they want is abortion at any time for any reason, and they want it at taxpayer expense, and that's wildly out of step.
Who makes the decision? Is it a woman and her physician, or is it the government?
Judicial races normally don't attract much attention or money, but North Carolina's Supreme Court races are the exception this year. So far, the candidates have raised more than $3 million. Is it good for North Carolina for that much money to be spent on a judicial race?
Yeah, I do worry about it.
2 seats are on the ballot. Republican Richard Dietz versus Democrat Lucy Inman in one race. Democrat Sam Ervin versus Republican Trey Allen in the other. At stake, which party controls the high court and possibly decides the fate of major issues such as abortion and voting rights. Right now, Democrats hold a 4-3 majority. Does it matter which party is in control of the Supreme Court?
It shouldn't. I don't get up every morning and say, what is the agenda for my political party today?
We have several congressional races in the Piedmont Triad. Republican Virginia Fox is running for a 10th term in Washington. She faces political newcomer Kyle Parrish in the 5th Congressional District, covering the northwest part of the state.
We've gotten things done for the American people, and I don't see that on the other side of the aisle.
Meantime, Democrat Kathy Manning hopes to win a 2nd term representing the Triad. She faces Republican Christian Castelli, who's making his first run for political office.
I think she represents the ultra-wealthy. She's listed as the 19th most wealthy member in the House of Representatives.
One of the most contentious campaigns for the North Carolina legislature is taking place in Alamance County.
Tough times require real leaders, not radicals like Ricky Hurtado.
A rematch from 2020 featuring Republican challenger Steve Ross versus incumbent Democrat Ricky Hurtado.
I'm so disappointed that my opponent continues to spout misinformation across the county.
The big question looming over North Carolina's legislative races: will Republicans win a supermajority, allowing them to bypass Governor Cooper's veto power?
My biggest concern is we relive the embarrassments to this state that we had when they had supermajorities before, whether it be HB2.
And finally, our 2022 commitment coverage asks candidates the tough question. What is your favorite food?
Boy, that's a tough one. Honestly, I was thinking about that. I don't know if I have a favorite. I really don't.
Want to guess the most popular food among candidates? Stay tuned and find out. Bill O'Neill, WXII 12 News.
All righty, and I'm sure you are receiving that same kind of messaging, you're receiving that same kind of video feed throughout North Carolina as a whole. So wherever you are in the Western North Carolina Conference, wherever you are in the Eastern District, you're seeing the same kind of and level of publication and the same line of lines coming from Democratic as well as Republican candidates. And so as we stand before you on today, we want to remind you of, first of all, that in terms of races on the ballot, 1 U.S. Senate seat, 14 U.S. House seats, several state offices, including General Assembly, Supreme Court, as well as Court of Appeals, local judges and prosecutors, as well as county offices like sheriff and county commissioners. And one of the things that we know statistically, that during midterms, we do not show up to vote. We wait until the every 4-year cycle when there is a presidential candidate. But don't you realize that all politics are local?
Amen. Amen.
And that whatever the federal government wishes to release to the states, it has to be dispatched and sent out by local officials. And so if you have prosecutors who are disproportionately housing our black men and women in prisons when the white folk get charged with the same crime but get off with easier sentences, if we don't vote, if we have sheriffs who will constantly hire folk who are white nationalists and then wonder why it is that folk are being pulled over for the simplest of infractions. If we don't vote, that's on us. So what time is it?
What time is it? What time is it? How many of us have already voted? Early voting started yesterday. Okay. What's on the ballot? Everything. Your life is on the ballot. This is the year that we got to get out and vote. And what can we do? Vote. What can you do to prepare others to vote? What about the videos that we have been watching? What about phone banking? What about the texting? Now, I would like our missionary president to tell us about what happened last night. I also would like for Pastor Gwen Wise-Blackman to report to us what we are not doing and we promised that we would do. Is she in the house? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. To God be the glory, for on last night we trained 48 missionaries and friends to start texting this morning at 9 o'clock. We have been in partnership with the lay organization as well, so we have partnered up together so that we can get our lay and our missionaries to get the vote out. And you'll see a text, and it has Mother Parks on there, who is the civil rights leader, who is the mother of civil rights. We have a picture of her that is tied to the database that Barbara and I, President Barbara and I requested of the Community Change Action Organization that has partnered with us in this effort. So we had 115 lay members and missionaries to sign up. We had 48 to join last night and 28 that joined the week before last. So, if you are interested in partnering with the missionaries in the lay organization of the Western North Carolina Conference, please reach out to Sister Barbara Myers, who is the president of the lay organization, or myself. We will be able to give out our email address. Mine is Diane, D-I-A-N-E, Tawwab, T-A-W-W-A-B, @gmail.com. And Sister Barbara Myers and I will be glad to hook you up with the sisters and brothers Get Out to Vote text team. Thank you.
We just had a conversation about being partners and partnering with people to get things done. Black Voters Matter has been partnering with the AME Church, particularly those of us here in North Carolina, because we have an opportunity to make some changes that need to happen in Washington, D.C. So what we need you to do, we've been sending out things. I know y'all are tired of getting things from me in email. And we just kicked off another email address. You're going to start getting things from that email address. If you have questions and you want to be part of the phone banking, I want you to write this down. Y'all got no pencil and paper out? Write this down. AME is real easy. AMEWNCCGOTV for Get Out the Vote. That is now going to be our central email address for you to send questions and for us to then send out material for training. The phone banking is easy. Now, yes, we've had some frustration because like with anything, sometimes the numbers are wrong. Record that and keep going to the next one. You can set up through Google Voice to call from your computer, so you don't have to use your own phone number. They won't know who you are. They can't call you later. But we need to concentrate on those people who only seem to vote every 4 years. We need them to vote now, go now to vote, so if there's a problem with the record, if you've been removed from the rolls, you can fix it now. And tell folk why it's important.
Thank you. Also, is it too late for me to register and vote? So if it's not too late, how can I register and vote? At the polls where you go. Can I register on November the 8th and vote? Can we register and vote on the day of? I didn't think that we could. You can do it through early voting, but not the day of.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have any questions for us? Can I stay at home and vote? Yes, you can, because you can vote by mail. Mail in.
And there are other ways in which we vote. Now, I hail from Greensboro, the home of Ag Pride, the home of the brilliant and beautiful Bennett Bells, where the student sit-ins began February the 1st, 1960. Many of the constituents and many of the members of Bethel were high school students or college students who marched, who were arrested. And that not only speaks for Bethel in Greensboro, but many of the African-American churches that are in the Guilford County. We are an activist community in Greensboro. It's just in our blood. We believe in civic engagement and civil responsibility. It's just in the DNA. And so oftentimes when I raise the question in terms of how many of my members have registered to vote, without fail, almost the entire congregation will raise their hand. Okay? And then as we move further into early voting, I'll raise another question. How many of you have voted already? The majority of the members will always raise their hand. So Bethel itself, we vote in great numbers, and Bethel serves as a polling station as well. So therefore, oftentimes those who are missing are not the ones you see on Sunday mornings. The ones who are missing would be the children and grandchildren of the ones you see on Sunday mornings, where they do not feel like the system is working for them. So that crowd that we don't see in church, that's the crowd that's not voting. And so you might be saying, well, what do we do? What can we do? You have already heard some of the things that we can do, but there's still something called Souls to the Polls. Yeah. The only Sunday where the polls are open will be just one, and that is on Fifth Sunday, which I do believe is November the 30th. Yep. That is the only, October the 30th. Thank you. Okay, October the 30th, that's the only Sunday where you can take members of your church, members of the community to the polls to help them to register and to vote there. And so there are things that we can still do, because old school still works, amen, somebody. Okay, we still know how to drive a van, amen, somebody. We still know how to use a pen or a pencil or whatever the case is, amen, somebody. We still know old school still works, and we need to help our members and those who we don't see and those who need assistance to make sure that they are able to get to vote. So what are you doing? What are you doing to hold up your corner? What are you doing to make a difference? You have to do more than just simply send out an email.
That's right.
You have to also speak from the pulpit. You also have to still use the class leader system. You need to have a civil engagement and voting engagement Sunday. There are a number of different things that we can still do, okay? Because it's a blending of both old and new in order to meet the challenges of this current age. So always raise the question, what are you doing? And then see what you can do with the people that you serve. All right, Penny?
We must minister outside the four walls. So that means that we have to go outside the four walls and talk to people, tell them why they should vote. We have to make contact with the people that we don't see every day, with the people that you work with. You don't have to tell them who to vote for, but just share information with them. Yes.
Is will the text be coming from my own personal phone? Will they know that Diane Tawwab is texting them? We are doing the texting through the Community Change Organization Action Group, and it's the app that they have called Impactive. So you will be texting, you will select Sister Parks, Rosa Parks' picture with Sister Stepina on there. You will select that template. That template is tied to the database that lists the Western North Carolina Conference counties and zip codes of the African American Black voters. And so what we are targeting is our people, to remind them to get out to vote. So the text will come up, hi, this is Diane. Remember to vote, early vote, and giving the dates and all that type of information. So we found that it's simpler, easier to get people's attention to vote if they see a picture than if they see a lot of words.
Amen.
So
Amen.
we don't have to engage, we can engage them. They can send us back a text saying, yes, I voted, please stop, remove me. But these are the things that are being done to help our people, our community, to get out to vote. So thank you for this time.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions?
For all the program participants for the worship services, you could please follow Pastor Knox to get ready for worship. Thank you.
And in my final remarks, I do see a hand, but as the microphone is coming to you, I am delighted to share with the Eastern District that my daughter, Maya, our daughter, Maya, is a freshman at Georgia Tech. And she's been there and enjoying herself in college and having this love-hate relationship with Georgia Tech as she's studying neuroscience with a minor in psychology. But one of the things that we talked about before she left, I said, baby, this is voting time. You are 18 and a half. What are you going to do? And she sent me a text the other day, and she said, Dad, I am registered to vote here in Georgia. I'm like, praise the Lord. Do what you're supposed to do to make a difference. And so I would say to all of you, it doesn't matter where your grandchildren or your children are living, encourage them to vote where they are. Encourage them to vote too, because we have to make a change, not just where you live, but all around us. You are the influencer in your family. So make sure you use that to the greatest extent in which you can to encourage all of us to vote. We have a question from the floor.
No, it wasn't a question. I realized I forgot to say that I gave you the first part of the email address. It's @gmail.com.
Thank you.
And also, don't forget that we are supposed to be reporting what we are doing. We are to report that to Reverend Marion Robertson. Every Thursday is our deadline. And that is so that we can benefit from a grant that was given to us. So let's not forget that. Any other questions?
Okay. Yes. And as the microphone is going to our sister over in the corner, some of the data we're trying to collect, how many contacts you've made, how many flyers were distributed, how many emails went out, how many people tuned into your virtual platforms looking at your pages where you have information on voting. That kind of information is what we're trying to capture as well, okay? And not to mention the folk you see at Walmart, or the folk you might see, I told you old school works, you know, the folk you talk to at the beauty salon, the folk you talk to at the barbershop, wherever you are, make sure you try your best to capture that data. We see a...
I just want to make a comment. I notice as I'm aging and on disability, I don't like standing in long lines, and sometimes I'm not able to due to back and knees, whatever. And a lot of people, they go around and be like, because my preference for the past 2 years has been mail-in ballot.
Yes, ma'am.
Try to discourage, like, no, they're not going to get that ballot. You better get on in there and go up there and slide it in yourself. So just making a comment that I feel comfortable with the mail-in ballot, and I did get confirmation to, every time saying that it went through, and it's probably because I do it 3 weeks in advance. I take it to the bank, get it notarized, put it in the mailbox, making sure that it does get there instead of waiting to the last minute.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that.
We have a lot of felons that don't know that they can vote once they've served their time and paid their fines. And I have been trying to get the word out from the Sunday school district when we had Sunday school convention. Shiloh had some paper, you know, so I've been getting those forms out. But we really need to let them know they can vote.
Very good. Thank you for the reminder, absolutely, that once you have served your time to society because of a crime that has been committed, you're eligible to vote in the state of North Carolina.
I just wanted to say for folks that are disabled, they do have, if you call in, I don't know what the number is in your local area, but you can call in and they will have someone come to your house to help you cast your vote.
And I have a mail-in ballot here for my parents. Remember now, it either has to be notarized or you have to have 2 persons to sign it, and it goes in a special envelope. And if it's not done right, if you get it there in time, they will contact you. But this is an official mail-in ballot.
Sister Penny, also if the person was disabled and someone drove them there, someone inside of the voting will come directly to the car.
That's true.
They will come to the car. You fill out all the paperwork. Everything is done, and they don't even have to move.
That's
they
true.
come to you.
That's
I
true.
witnessed it last time and yesterday. I stood there and watched. So that's even good. You know how you said, any way you can come.
Any way you can vote.
Just
Vote.
come.
We
Amen.
got to vote.
By any means necessary.
Yes.
All righty. Well, we thank you for your time. We thank you for your listening ear. And we thank you for your vote. God bless you.
God bless you.
Let's thank Sister Penny and Reverend Barrow for that presentation. And as Sister Penny said, what time is it? All right, let's get out there. We're going to wait for everyone. I asked everyone to please not move this time because it takes us too long to get back together. So if you just sit tight, and we're going to start worship in just a few minutes.